I genuinely can't believe I spent 6 hours of my life making LUGIA decks. What's going on, you guys? Kenny from Team VSTAR here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a video for Silver Tempest. Now, I promised you in the last video that we would be bringing Silver Tempest stuff come the next week, and well, it's the next week, and that means it's closer to Toronto Regionals and Arlington and the official release of Silver Tempest. With pre-releases rolling out, testing has begun for most players for Toronto Regionals, including myself. Now with that, there is a new powerful archetype going around with Lugia and Archeops. Lugia has an ability to where it's a V-Star ability to where it places 2 colorless Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench, which sounds okay at first, and the attack for 4 colorless energy does 220 and discards a stadium. Not bad. But the Archeops has an ability where you search a deck for 2 special energies and attach them to one of your Pokemon, which it can be any special energy and any Pokemon you can attach it to, which is very, very interesting, seeing how we have never had a way to successfully accelerate special energies from the deck. Now, I bet you're wondering, well, why don't you just play straight Lugia with powerful colorless energies and just make it as consistent as possible? And answer that, that's boring. Why don't we invest more time into different Lugia variants? And that's what I'm going to be showing you off today. I'm going to be showing you 20 different Lugia variants with Archeops that I've compiled through the standard meta. Now, not every single deck is going to be competitive. Some are going to be wackier than the next, and some make sense or are competitive than others. So let's jump right into it. Quick note, I'm going to be having timestamps in the description below in order to save you time in case you want to look at a specific one, because I know some of you don't really want to watch through the entire video to see every single one of the Lugia decks until you find something interesting when you can just click it and then be like, oh, this is the one I'm looking for. So that's always something that you're going to be looking at. In second, I know I forgot straight Lugia. It wasn't a matter of forgetting. I know that deck exists. Everybody knows that deck exists. We all know that deck is going to be tier 1 with straight. This video is more or less looking at the creativity of how you can approach different Lugia variants. Thank you. Enjoy the video. Now, before I go on, I do want to point out 85% of you who watch the videos aren't actually subscribed, so I'd greatly appreciate if you do subscribe. If we reach 200 subscribers by the end of this year, which means you have the full month of November and the full month of December, I will be giving away a Silver Tempest Elite Trainer box, and I will be selecting the winner at the end of the month of December. So, going forward into here, we have our first deck, of course, because there's 20 of them. I'm not going to go into full explanation to why certain card counts, more or less just why I thought the concept could work, or why I even thought of the existence of it to begin with. So first off, we have Darkrai VSTAR. Darkrai VSTAR is an attack where it does 30 plus 30 for each dark energy on your board. With this, you are able to accelerate hiding dark energies, single strike energy onto Tyranitar V and Aurora energy. Now, all the lists aren't perfect. I spent 6 hours compiling 20 different decks from scratch with absolutely no references available. So there are going to be some weird counts. Like, there could be a second Tyranitar, it could be a single prize Pokemon over Tyranitar. I just think Tyranitar, because the problem with it before was you couldn't accelerate multiple single strike energies to it, and you had to discard cards from the second attack to it while also loading your bench and damage on you, was a big issue for Tyranitar. But 2 Archeops loads it up, and it allows it to hit 320 on a VMAX, which is pretty insane to think about, if not 320 on any Pokemon that's there. And it also benefits Darkrai being a dark energy on the field. So you have 12 different energies, so I believe that's 390 with Darkrai if you have all of the energies on the field. You also have the ability to attack with Lugia. Of course, you play 3 powerful colorless in case you do. So you do hit the 280 threshold, and you also play Amazing Rare Yveltal, which you're going to see a common kind of thing with all these Lugia decks, that either A, all look the same, because that's genuinely how I feel like they should be built, is a couple cards off from what they are. If not, when the meta starts to develop, you add things like Dunsparce, or more big Parasol. So the lists aren't taken into consideration of right now and what we know from Silver Tempest and what's been going on in Japan. But Yveltal Amazing Rare, I'm just going to throw it out there, is a Duraludon counter, because you have absolutely no way of dealing with Duraludon in any of these Lugia decks, for one. And two, it is a very good pivot against 3 prize Pokemon and 2 prize Pokemon in general. So if you cannot reach the numbers that you need with your Pokemon, you can reach it with Yveltal. A card to consider would be Double Turbo in this build, though. Oh, hello. Next off, we have Lugia Slaking, which was something that I completely hyped off when I saw Lugia and Archeops. I'm like, Slaking could be very cool. It's 260 damage with a Path to the Peak canceling. After you already use Lugia's ability to get the Archeops in play, you just stack 3 powerful colorless and a V-Guard, and you're smacking for a ton of damage. This is one of the very few decks that I believe should run Dunsparce, because otherwise you just auto-lose to Regis, you auto-lose to anything that could hit you for weakness right off the bat as a 2-prizer. And Cape of Toughness also makes you big and chonky. So, like, with V-Guard Energy and Cape of Toughness, I believe you have 310 HP with this thing, and it's swinging like a truck. So I do play 2 Path to the Peak for the specific reason of being able to use the attack through the ability. If you do make a weird prize trade, you are able to maneuver around it. Maybe Lost City will replace it at some point, but I don't know. I feel like the energy count and everything else is fine with it. Next up, we have Lapras VMAX. Lapras VMAX does 60 plus 30 for each water energy attached to it. I don't know if this is going to be the most competitive by any means, but it definitely seems interesting because you're able to stack 4 wash energies and 4 roar energies onto it and hit for a ton of damage. Choice Belt also helps fix that math. You do have access to 4 powerful colorless energy so that you can attack with Lugia in case you run into a Pokemon that you can't really one-shot quick enough with Lapras, or you could just load up an attack with Lugia and then slowly start to build up your Lapras later. Is this the best? Probably not. We don't know, but it's definitely something really, really funny and I thought could be decent. Also, Wash Energy stops things like opposing Amazing Rare Yveltals, and it stops Beedrill and Sableye and Giratina. So it stops all those little minuscule things, which is why I feel like if you can accelerate a Wash Energy to its fullest effect, it is pretty good because it does help against a lot of things in the meta currently. Next off, we have Lugia Dhelmise VMAX. I think this is probably the worst one, I'll be real with you, just because Dhelmise VMAX, very underwhelming. Max is at 240 damage, but with the exception of the first attack being able to snipe things onto the bench, depending on how many grass energies you have, you can get up to 8 and snipe to 180 damage, which isn't terrible, but you're also not one-shotting really anything, but you can one-shot Vs really quickly with the Max Anchor attack, and it has a cool revenge attack. But like I said, you're probably relying on Amazing Rare Yveltal if you are trying to one-shot VSTAR / VMAXs in a deck like this. Next off, we have Torkoal V, which I think is a very, very cool concept. Torkoal V has an attack for 3 fire and a colorless where it does 120 and it discards 2 energies off your opponent's active with 4 heat energies, because heat energy stacks your HP up plus 20 for each one you have on there, and Cape of Toughness, you actually raise your HP up to 230, which means Torkoal can have up to 340 HP and swing and discard your energy, which is pretty insane to think about. The biggest vice I'd say is that the damage cap is very low. You don't one-shot any of the Regis except for Regieleki, the Terra Spark one, which is something to consider, where if they're attacking with Regice, they're doing 200 and it just gets really messy really quick. But against like opposing Lugias where you're consistently discarding their energies and they can't one-shot you, it is very, very funny. So moving on, we have Heatran VMAX. Heatran VMAX has an ability to where if there's a stadium card in play, you heal 50 damage from it, and the attack does 180 for 2 fire and a colorless, and does your opponent's active Pokemon is burned. The reason why I think this is cool is not only because you can stack heat energy like we were doing with Torkoal, but it can also act as kind of the deck that doesn't lose to really anything. And hold on when I say that, because it's kind of the logic with Arceus VSTAR Charizard, where against Palkia, you just don't drop the Charizard and you swing with Arceus. The problem with that was Arceus could never one-shot Palkia. Lugia can one-shot Palkia because of the powerful colorless energies. And then Heatran against decks that aren't Palkia not only heals itself, but it stacks its HP super, super high because of the 4 Heat energies and one of your V-Guard energies, which makes V Pokemon's attacks minus 30. So essentially, your Heatran VMAX can get up to 340 HP and heal itself, which is insane to think about. Now, of course, it doesn't one-shot VSTAR VMAXs. The burn does up to 200 damage, and you are forced to play Big Parasol because you don't want to get Amazing Rarity Volatile to yourself, but it is a very cool concept to think about as a big, tanky attacker that you can load up with Archeops. The next one on the list is Machamp VMAX. You can kind of see the pattern that I'm taking with a lot of these. Same kind of concept where you stack 4 Stone Energies and a V-Guard energy, so you're actually taking less damage. Cards to consider in here would also be Full Face Guard, but I would prefer Big Parasol so you don't get Yveltal and make the prize trade really, really bad. Also, you need a damage counter on one of your bench Pokemon, which is really obnoxious unless you want to swing with Max Tai Chi, I think the attack is. But that's really kind of what you're doing anyway with it to begin with. Next one is Snorlax VMAX. This is a card that has not seen play in Standard whatsoever since Triple Acceleration has rotated, but it's awesome expanded play. I actually played it for one of the regionals. The reason why I think it could be something now is because it's kind of a type difference. And what I mean by that is when you're facing up against something like Reggie's, if they're using Regieleki, you can just immediately go into Snorlax and just start one-shotting them. I don't believe the Regirock cannot one-shot the Snorlax without a belt. Even then, you can just slap on Lake Acuity, which makes its HP up to 350 or 360, so you don't get one shot through the belt as well, which is really interesting to think about. Big Parasol stops your Yveltal plays. So essentially what I'm saying is anything that Snorlax cannot one-shot, Lugia will one-shot, and Snorlax is just this big Pokemon with an irrelevant weakness as of right now in the meta. That's just really, really dangerous. Of course, the biggest vice is doing 210 max is very, very lackluster. Being at 3 prize is also very, very bad. But like I said, 340 HP, V-Guard Energy making it 370 is very cool. And Lake Acuity making it 390 could also be very cool because you can slam down Aurora, you can slam down Powerful Colorless to make it do more damage. Like, it's just an endless cycle with this. Next up is Giratina, and I know a bunch of people know about this deck, or they kind of looked at it and they were like, well, why is this better than Lost Tina? Genuinely, it just comes down to player preference and comes down to which one is the most consistent, and as of right now, we don't know, but this is a very interesting deck because you're always searching from deck. The 2 you lost on, you always just immediately search back with Archeops, and then you have a new toy, or not a new toy, but like an older toy that kind of fits in here naturally because of the way that this deck is built, and that's Amazing Rare Zacian, where it does 300 damage if your opponent's active as a VMAX. It does 150 base though, so the choice but you're doing 330 on VMAX is you one-shot the QRMs that you can't normally one-shot. You one-shot Mewtwo or Oricorio with Choice Belt. So it's just a very, very, very cool card in a deck like this, especially because you can play the 4 aromatic energies that they both need, a psychic energy which they both need, and then the X colorless energy would be the Coating Metal. Of course, a card to consider also would be V-Guard energy, so your Giratina has 310 HP. Moving forward, we have Gengar VMAX. Gengar VMAX is something that everybody really likes and was very strong when Mew was prevalent and very strong when Arceus was prevalent at the early forefront, just because of how consistent, in quotes I say, it was and how strong it was. The biggest problem was how you damaged it, and there wasn't really a good way to accelerate it. Even with the turbo engine, you were just very coin flippy reliant. So with Archeops, you can actually, with 2 Archeops, you just immediately set up a Gengar and you're swinging 72, 93, 10, 3, 30 immediately, which one-shots almost everything in the entire game if you're not a Snorlax. Big Parasol to stop the Yveltal plays is also very alive. Really, the vice of this deck is one prize box is active, and it's very dangerous for a deck like this. But against things like Lugia, to where you can one-shot them almost naturally and they can't one-shot you, is very cool. And you just sit there against other decks and just fear and panic them, or you G-Max Swallow Up, or you can even Dark Explosion? I don't know what the attack name is. Place it in the comment section below. But I think this concept is really, really cool. Then Greedent VMAX, I know a couple players would really appreciate the post and the plug of Greedent VMAX. Of course, Greedent VMAX has an attack turn of profit where it does 30 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is basic, and it's knocked out, you take a couple extra prize cards. So with a concept like this, if you can get turn 2 Greedent with a couple powerful colorless energies and knock out Comfies, for a turn of profit, you can like almost win the game halfway, which is really funny to think about. The way that I approach it is, if I play 2 Amazing Rare Yveltals, because if Greedent can't knock it out, Yveltal will, which is why you play the 4 Auroras, 2 Horror Psychic Energies, 2 Hiding Darks, the 4 Powerful Colorless, and the 2 DTEs. So Max Gimme is alive, but you can just outright kill with Amazing Rare Yveltal, and things like Comfies and Sobble you just knock out with the turn of profit with a couple powerful colorless energies, if not more. Especially because now you're not limited to attack for how much damage you can attack for after turn 2, because on your turn, like what I mean by that is, like, you could Melanie attach powerful colorless turn 1 and attach powerful colorless turn 2, and then Spongy Gloves or Cleansing Gloves, but now you can go powerful colorless, powerful colorless, powerful colorless, powerful colorless, and do 80 more, which does 110, so you actually one-shot a Cramorant and take 3 prize cards, which is insane to think about, too. You also one-shot Amazing Rare Yveltal yourself, so it's a very interesting concept to think about when it comes to Arceus and Archeops and Lugia. Hence is another reason why we play 2 Boss Reduce Arena, so that we could actually boss things up while keeping consistency. Oh, hello. Then we have Butterfree VMAX, Lugia VMAX, or VSTAR with Archeops. It's not the best deck, I will say, but it is very interesting, and hear me out. Radiant Sneasler plus Choice Ball does 220 damage, it does 220 damage, then confuses them, so if it doesn't knock them out already, you can rely on either the Confusion or Amazing Rare Yveltal. Has free retreat, and that's really all I got for it. You get Aromatic Energy, so you don't get any status condition to it, which is okay, but it's a very cool deck. I don't think it's the best. I think it's on par with Dhelmise, but V-Guard Energy makes it up 330 and free HP and swings for 220 with Radiant Caesar, so it's pretty cool. Then we have Charizard VMAX Lugia, which is something I know maybe a couple people have been testing, because Arceus Charizard has been a pet deck for a lot of people, and this deck is just very reminiscent of that, being able to just one-shot Palkias that you couldn't do before with Arceus that I was talking about. So essentially, you Archeops, you get down 2 Heat Energies, and then you attach another one with another Archeops and a double Turbo. Choice Belt, you do 310. If you're not doing that, you can take a turn to accelerate. And if you run into something like a Palkia, you can just attach a couple powerful colorless energies and one-shot the Palkia. You also play Lost City, because in a deck like this, Reggie's is a very bad matchup. So you could just inevitably use Incinerate, I believe is the attack on that one, which does X amount of damage to knock out a Reggie. You can also discard a bunch of tools that way and then do more damage. Oh no, it doesn't do more damage for tool. But I think Charizard Lugia could be very interesting. V-Guard Energy allows it to have 360 HP. Heat Energy allows it to have more HP than that. And then you can discard them when you absolutely don't need them. And then also cleans up things that maybe you weren't able to kill before, but also things like Kyurem that Lugia can't even kill, that you could use to just take out a Kyurem. Then we have Salamence VMAX. Reason being is being able to swing for 240 base is pretty good, and then you can stack powerful colorless energies and do an absurd amount of damage, 320, 350 with a Choice Belt. And then you can spread. Spreading is fairly solid. I wouldn't say it's the best right now because Manaphy is running around, but you know, against things like Reggie, if you just decide to spread and you don't get one shot, because I think Dunsparce would be a fine inclusion in this one because you're pure, all your Pokemon are pure weak to lightning, for the most part. It could be very interesting. Or against Lost Box when they don't drop the Manaphy, it could be very cool. So I wouldn't say Salamence. I'd say Salamence is on par with Dhelmise and Butterfree, but it is also something to consider along with Tornadus VMAX because you do have the ability of powerful colorless energy to stack. And then we got Meowth VMAX, again, another deck that I think is on par with Dhelmise and all of them, only because the only reason why I wanted to build a list on this is because 200 and draw 3 is pretty cool. You can stack 4 powerful colors and do 280, 310 with a choice belt, and then you can just draw your entire deck pretty quickly. Yveltal can also clean up knockouts that you can't, and Lugia is just kind of the backup, so just another thing. Eevee VMAX, kind of the same way. Eevee VMAX does 150 damage for 3 colorless energy, and if your opponent's active Pokemon tries to attack during the next turn, they flip tails, they don't do it. So it's a very interesting stall card, and it takes advantage of barely any switches being around, except in like Lost Box and a couple other decks like that. Which you do play Lost City, so you can like Lost on the Reggies that you one-shot or the Lost Box decks that you run into. Again, you also fall back onto the Amazing Rare Yveltal if you can't one-shot something and they go to one-shot you, or the Lugia. But you mainly take advantage of the lack of switch cards in the format and hit for a decent number of damage with powerful colorless energy. Of course, because you're a VMAX in this kind of deck, you have to run Parasol over big choice belt, which is very unfortunate, but you know, you can live. And then here's kind of the final concept that I really, really liked and want to see more of with Lugia Archeops, and that is going to be the VUnions. I built one for most of all the VUnions. There are some that I just kind of point blank ignored because it was just bad, or I just, you know, looked at it and I was like, I mean, it's just kind of redundant to another one. Zacian VUnion is one that I didn't consider at first, but then I thought about it, and the attack, the one at the bottom right card does 340 and discards 3 energy, which is kind of nutty. Like, you just one-shot everything naturally, for one, and two, like, discarding the energy isn't really that bad when you just accelerate them back on the board from the deck. Of course, you're not going to be using that every single turn, because it also has an attack where it does 150 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, I believe the defending Pokemon's attacks do 150 less, or the Pokemon that tries to attack does 150 less, which is really, really annoying. Also, you can play, I bet you're also wondering, you're like, oh, but the VUnions are impossible to get into the discard pile after I already have to get Archeops. But Primordial Altar, which is a new stadium card where you may look at the top card of your deck and choose to discard it, helps the consistency so much. And hear me out, it's because you can Oranguru VUnion piece and just immediately discard it, put energies back into the deck, possibly hit other Archeops pieces and just discard and blow through your deck as fast as you possibly can. Hence the reason for Luminium Burnett as well. Burnett is a supporter card that nobody has really, the card is literally never seen play. You just discard 2 cards from your deck, which is pretty cool because you're just able to instantly discard 2 VUnion pieces, and if you have them clubbed to your hand, you can just go Ultra Ball and then Oranguru piece and then Primordial Ultra the other one out and get it potentially even turn 1, which is crazy to think about, and then turn 2 have it rolling out with the Archeops. Of course, the biggest vice with the VUnions are if you prize one piece, they're not accessible, but because you do play 4 powerful colorless energy, you're able to attack with Lugia and Amazing Rare Yveltal with the 4 Auroras, so that you are able to dig for the pieces later on. Also, Serena is a very big card for this as well. I don't know if I've explained it yet, but you discard up to 3 cards from your hand and you draw your hand up to 5, or you may choose one of your opponent's bench V Pokemon and bring it up to the active, which is very powerful in a deck like VUnions. Same thing with Greninja. Greninja's not the best, but because it can abuse Wash Energy, it is up there, and there's an attack on it where you can do 100 damage to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which is pretty cool. And if they don't see the VUnion, if you get the VUnion out fast enough before they drop the Manaphy, you can just kill a Lost Zone player immediately and just get rid of everything on their entire field. As you can see in this build, we do play Big Charm because Choice Belt seemed very bad because all the attacks do 180 damage at most. So you're not really one-shotting anything, you're just mainly spreading, which is really, really funny. And a V-Guard Energy plus a Big Charm allows it to have 360 HP and an ability that, I believe the ability is look at your opponent's hand, but you know, it's not the best VUnion out of all of them that there was made, but because it can use Wash Energy is pretty cool. Mewtwo VUnion, probably the most looked at and the most played out of the VUnions. Obviously, it's going to see play. We get the Horror Psychic Energies so that when your opponent actually hits into you, you deal damage back to them, and you can just sit there and heal, which is pretty funny to think about how you can just accelerate the Horror Psychic Energies, and then every single time they attack into you, it's 80, and then you just heal 200 off, and you can actually control your bench with this, which can also really, really hurt Palkia, or you can just Final Burn them. 300, and I think it does 300 flat, which you can just Choice Belt and just knock them out. Yeah, I think, if anything, in the VUnion decks, I think you should run a second Oranguru, but it's just, space was very tight in a deck like this, and I felt like if you wanted to start Lugia, you couldn't have too many bench Pokemon, but there is only, I believe, 5, 6, 7 of them, so if you just swap an Archeops for an Oranguru, it could do well. Maybe even swap the Yveltal, but I feel like Yveltal is just kind of a staple in these Archeops decks, just being able to just, you know, knock out anything and just ignore your Aldon. This is probably my favorite one. It's going to be Pikachu VUnion, because it has a disconnect attack for 150 damage, and then an attack for 250 damage, and then it can attack during the next turn. But mainly, the main thing is you one-shot Palkia, and you can item lock them, or you can one-shot Lugia, and then item lock them, which is really, really, really funny. You also get the draw power in Speed Lightning if you do end up attaching to it. And then the Primordial Altar, like everything else, you know, it's just a combination that I feel like is really, really funny. It may not be good, but it's just very interesting to think about. And that is the last of the decks that we've made for Lugia Archetypes. I thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like for more content. If you would like to see any more decks, preferably not Lugia from the set, please drop it in the comment section below. I'm always looking for ideas to kind of, you know, work around. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Aside from that, have a great one.